So this new interpretation that I have developed, what does it mean? What are the implications of that? Well, if you start to look at Einstein's equation, E equals mc squared. Now, there are several ways you can look at this. You can rearrange the equation and look at m equals E divided by c squared, or you can look at it as c squared equals E divided by m. Now, these three interpretations, this we know is light, and it's light squared. Here we have electromagnetism. So the interaction of the electric field with the magnetic field providing light. Now we know mathematically there's a formula for a straight line. Y equals mx plus c. And we know y and x on a graph. Y-axis, x-axis. Position of C is the location on this line here, the y-axis. If C is positive, then it's going to be above 0. If C is negative, it's below 0. If C is 0, then it is at this point here. Now, for 3 dimensions, we also have another axis, which is the z axis. So x, y, z. Okay, so this m in a straight line is known as rise over run, or y over x. In the mathematical formula of light equaling electromagnetism, we have E divided by M. So I assumed that C is 0 in this. When C is 0, what happens? Well, E has to be 0 and M has to be 0. So when C squared equals 0, E equals 0 and M equals 0. So at this point here we have 0, 0, 0. Okay. We can now put on this mathematical geometry Einstein's equation, where y is the rise, E, and negative E. M is the x. So M is the x-axis, M negative M. And the z-axis is C squared and negative C squared. So here we have extended Einstein's formula by rearranging it and looking at the geometry of light with respect to the right-hand rule of electromagnetism. And what we see is in this quadrant, it's E divided by M. In this quadrant, it's negative E divided by m in this quadrant, negative e divided by negative m, and this quadrant is e divided by negative m. All of a sudden, we have concepts which provide alternative viewpoints. The interaction of light with energy to produce magnetism or matter, depending on how you view Einstein's equation. The interaction of an electric and magnetic field at right angles to each other to generate light, and the traditional understanding, context of Einstein's equation of E equals mc squared, the interaction of magnetism and light to produce energy, or matter and light to produce energy. So what this formula actually allows you to do is think differently with respect to geometry and production of energy from a center point of 0, 0, 0. And at that point of 0, 0, 0, physics of relativity breaks down. Now that is the point of singularity. So the point of singularity where relativity breaks down means that actually we have the ability to see that 0 point within the geometry of a sphere. So if you have a sphere, excuse the bad drawings of a circle, the point in the middle is 0, 0, 0 with a radius of r. Now we know the area equals pi r squared. And if you take r squared and place it under that, the pi equals area divided by r squared. Now, if you are anything like me, then you'll see that formula and go, that looks similar to this, where m is e divided by c squared. If r squared equals c squared, then the interpretation would suggest that pi and m have a relationship. There are other mathematical calculations which provide some information with that type of structure, and I'll show them shortly. So the other mathematical formula that are inherent within the geometry of a sphere is the mathematical formula for gravity and for charge interaction. And you can see that with the formula G m1 times m2 divided by r squared, and Ke q1 times q2 divided by r squared. Now what we have here is essentially pi equals the area divided by r squared, and m equals e divided by c squared. So when c squared equals r squared, c can be substituted for r. So you can put light into the equation with respect to the mathematical calculations for gravity and the mathematical calculations for charge interaction. So going back to the geometry of rise over run, where we saw the XYZ coordinates of c squared equals E divided by M, well, you can also substitute plus and negative, right? So this can be +1, +1, -1, -1. And we can look at nearest neighbor interactions to see 1 over 1, -1 over 1, -1 over -1, and 1 over -1. So again, we have some interesting correlations between charge interaction, repulsion, and attraction within the structure geometry around center 0, 0, 0.